We are live, and I'm not even sure what we're calling this. Nick, what are we calling this? This is a programming discussion with two of the best at what they do. Nick Fowler behind the programming and Cara Saunders in the execution of all the fitness. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Excited to be here.
Likewise.
Good. Cara, how about you?
Yeah, good. Busy, training, parenting, doing business, doing all the stuff, just keeping busy.
Yeah. Any one of those would keep me busy.
Yeah.
Yes, any one of those would keep all of us busy. And before we started recording, I was sharing with Cara, I said that, you know, it seems as though keeping up with you on social media, the more that you are responsible for, the better you seem to be doing. So with child, with business, with the gym, with competing at the CrossFit games, it seems like you got your hands full, but you're doing it very well. How are you balancing all that?
I think the more you have, the more you're forced to find a way to balance it. And I think that's where the perception on the outside of like doing so well comes from, is that like you have to, if you don't look for ways to make it good and to balance out those things, you will just drown. You just like drown in commitment and life and all of those things. And so I've just spent a lot of time actually since the games last year, trying new things and finding new ways to achieve balance between like my family and my work and my own self. And yeah, it forces your hand. Like any tricky situation will force your hand. You can either drown or you can find a way to make it even better. So yeah, I don't want to drown.
We don't want you to drown either, and I think you're doing an awesome job. One of the primary purposes, and clearly people are tuning in to kind of learn a bit more about, one, you and Nick's dynamic as coach and athlete, and two, the real value behind having a relationship with even a coach or a one-on-one coach, or even like a small group coach, kind of like similarly to what we do with Brute. And again, before we started recording, you guys had a small conversation that said, or Nick asked you, you know, how are you feeling about the Open? And it's interesting, but Cara shared that, you know, she's kind of like, I haven't really thought much about it. And then Nick followed up with like, man, you know, I wish more athletes had that mindset. Nick, I'd love to hear your opinion on like, why do you think that's important, that Cara's really focused on what she's focused on and letting the Open take care of itself when it happens? Why is that important?
Gosh, I think if we could all be more present in what we're doing, we'd all be better off, right? I think that, and I do this too. I tend to leak energy, right? So obviously we all have full lives, no matter what your life looks like, how it's structured, who you have, what you're doing. But you know, it's really easy to get spread really thin, and I think that staying present is one of those ways to really, well, one, stay grounded in priorities and what's important, but also to excel at what you're doing, if that makes sense. So if we try to do too much, as everybody knows, right, we tend to end up doing everything just kind of a little bit crappy. And so I think being able to stay, you know, present just allows you to put that energy, that focus into whatever is in front of you. And so, you know, I think that as an athlete, you know, you go into the gym, and if you can stay present in the gym and not think about yesterday, not think about tomorrow, and really just think about the athlete you are today and what you can do today to become better tomorrow. I mean, that's the true keys to success. And I know, Cara, you mentioned a lot in terms of balance, right? And I think that's one thing that we're all striving for. And if, you know, you're striving for, you know, being an athlete and athletic goals, it's tough, right? Because training's sometimes a full-time sport. Anything we're passionate about, right, and that we do obsessively, you know, it's hard to find that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you share that, and I personally find it the same way. And Cara also mentioned that, you know, there's been a freedom ever since she started a business and became a mom, and the fact that she can actually walk away from the gym and not think about her training until it's time to show up and do more training. So I think there's certainly a beauty to that balance. And clearly that's another advantage to having a coach. If you guys are watching this and you have any curiosities about, signing up to have a one-on-one coach, or are kind of in search essentially for that for yourself, I'm going to put a link into the chat session. So at any time you can feel free to kind of click that and browse and get connected with us as a staff with group. Now, I want to kind of take this conversation. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to that, a little bit about that link, right? If you click on it, you can have a 20, 30-minute conversation with one of our coaches. And so it can be anything from, hey, like I've got this nagging injury, to like, hey, I haven't PR'd my squat in 2 years, to, hey, what do you guys think about this upcoming season? It's really just an opportunity to connect with one of us, no cost, no commitment, no expectation. And really just for us to, get to know you to get to know us, and really just kind of help the community. So that's really, I just kind of want to add that to what you said, AC.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you did. I appreciate that. Now to keep this conversation moving forward, I want to kind of talk about programming specifically. So my first question is going to be to you, Nick, and then I'll follow up with one to Cara specifically. But through 2020 and the challenges that it presented to us, right? You having the fortunate position to work with the best of the best athletes in the sport of fitness. What kind of challenges did it present to you as a programmer to not really know what to expect through 2020, and how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple perspectives that, like, when I reflect that I went through, that we went through as a team, that athletes went through. And one was this like big bird's eye, 30,000 foot perspective, like, hey, what's this season going to be like? When am I going to compete? What's that competition going to look like? Am I going to have an opportunity to compete? So I think that was like the first thing, right? And depending on who you are, some people were lucky enough in 2020 to get an in-person competition, some weren't. And so I think that not knowing that part was the biggest challenge. I think when it was boiled down to day-to-day, equipment availability, time constraints, everybody was experiencing, different restrictions throughout the world. But I think that was honestly the easiest part, because it's like, hey, I got 3 dumbbells and a wall ball. Like, I'm like, all right, well, we got 3 dumbbells and a wall ball. Like, there's tons we can do with very, very little. So I think for me as a coach, we're planning and, looking at the timing of the peaking, and basically just, okay, what's the goal? Like, that was the biggest kind of unknown, which created the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, yeah, just considering equipment alone, right? Like, as an obstacle for a lot of athletes. And then of course, considering the stimulus that you still hope to create with some of them in regards to specific weakness training, like all of those things, I know those had to be large obstacles specifically. Now, Cara, for you as a competitor, how did that affect your psyche as an athlete? Like, going into 2020, knowing that Nick was still doing the best that he could to serve you with whatever your resources were, how did you stay mentally focused on, like, whatever the test is going to be, I'll be ready?
Yeah, I think I'm similar. I was in a similar boat to Nick. So the logistics of equipment was not a massive issue for me. So I was lucky at the time in my home where I had most things. We were super resourceful, and we took it upon ourselves to set up our home gym. So I had all but everything. I was able to do most of my training. And, I'm a firm believer in that, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. And, if you can't do it with that, you can do it with something else. Like, you can still achieve a stimulus with minimal equipment or different equipment or whatever it may be. So that was never a major concern for me. The greatest struggle for me was similar. It was that unknown. And for me, I started my season back after having a baby. So there was no it was kind of like a rehab straight into a season that then dragged out into a very, very long season of is it coming yet? Is it coming yet? When do I peak? When is it and you're just day to day, trying to not burn out, but be fit enough, but not be too fit for too long, and, then crash. And it was the juggle and having to have that constant communication with Nick of where I'm at and what we need, and trying to find it's hard because you're really going in blind. And that was probably my greatest struggle that I had to work around. And just considering that my home then became my gym. It became where I parented my daughter. It was also where I was supposed to do my work and where I was supposed to relax. So this one space becomes so many different things, and trying to find a divide between those tasks and that headspace was definitely my greatest challenge. Some things I did better than others. There's some things I certainly did not nail, and I didn't master, and I definitely got to points of feeling a little bit cooked and just a little bit maxed out in all of the aspects of my life. But I tried to do the best I could at creating division between those different components, and trying to still get my gym bag and put my gym clothes on to go out into the gym, rather than just walking out of my jammies every day. And actually I'd be I'm going to the gym, get my gym bag and walk downstairs. But like everyone, we did the best that we could with what we had, and I think that's all you can do. And you don't know how your mind is going to cope. You don't know what's going to happen to your mindset. That's something that you can't predict, and you just have to kind of roll with it and try and make adjustments along the way to get the most out of what you have.
That's a great answer, and I appreciate that. Look, when I come downstairs to my basement, even to work and be on this webinar, I tell my kids hey, that is going to work. See you later, right? I still stage those kind of things, even if I'm just coming downstairs to do a little computer work. So I completely get it. We need those barriers. That's good that you know that and you've experienced it enough to be able to create that for yourself. Now, to take almost a couple steps back, Nick, I'd love to ask you, how has you and Cara's relationship changed, specifically when it comes to programming based around her pregnancy and post-pregnancy? And did that challenge you in new ways as a coach? What did you have to learn in order to help her continue to grow as an athlete in that aspect?
Yeah, those are some big questions. I think it's just a continuation of the years prior, even leading up through pregnancy, right, postpartum. It wasn't, I mean, obviously, right, there's things that I think we both learned along the way, and making sure that things like pelvic floor is considered, and just making sure those physiological aspects were taken care of. But that's, in a way, that's the easy part, right? It's everything else that I think I learned the most from. I think I was super excited. I have 2 daughters of my own, and knowing what Cara was on the precipice of is just really exciting, right? And so, one, I felt really lucky to be part of that process, but it was just a continuation. We had built, I feel a really good relationship leading up. Competed in the 2018 games, right? That kind of, we both learned a lot, and was able to take that forward. And through all of that process, we're still able to continue the work that we had, that we had kind of started, for lack of a better term. And so, it wasn't this big epic change. At least for me, maybe for you, Cara, your whole life changed, really. But yeah, so I think, I think that's it's not a very in-depth or relieving, but it's a relationship, right? And just through through life, through relationships with anybody in our life, it's not there's no stop and start, really, right? It's just this evolution. And so that's kind of where I feel like we are today, right? We've taken the years behind us, and we're building upon it. And 2021 is going to be an exciting year.
I agree, and I couldn't be more excited to see how you guys work together through that year, through this next year, which we're going to get to that in just a minute. But even with what you said, Nick, it really highlights, I think, the importance of communication, right? Because while a lot of things have changed in Carl's life as an athlete, things have probably changed in your life as a coach. You guys always got to be somewhere meeting in the middle in order to make this thing work. And so with that, I ask you, Carl, how open to like change is Nick in regards to your programming? So let's say, for example, you're coming off of a night with only 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Do you have the autonomy to kind of switch some things around and change some things, or do you just kind of tell them immediately, or do you kind of take that on it as your own decisions in regards to a week of programming?
Yeah, we had some really good conversations about this in particular, actually. And Nick has always, I think there's been 2 really firm times where he's been like, let me say this again. If it can't happen like today, like it's okay. Don't try and force anything. Like, your life is different now. You have different priorities. You have a child to take care of. Don't let this be a really like difficult and negative thing. Like, know that it's okay, that if it can't work, it can't work, and if something needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. And I think that was obviously that was a huge relief for me to hear, to know that that was okay, and to like give me that permission, because I'm the kind of person that's like, if it's written, I have to do it. Like, rain, hail, or shine, on my deathbed, like I need to do it. So it definitely took like for me to look inward and to work on my ability to let go. That's been a really huge part of this journey. And Nick's been like, oh chill, like it's all good, do it, like we'll be good, like we'll find a way, we'll adapt, and we'll be in a state of flux forever. And yeah, it took me a little bit of time to be like, okay, we're going to meet in the middle. Nick's going to create like the ideal scenario based off the communication that we've had and where I'm at and what I need to achieve, in a week, a month, 6 months, whatever. And then I'm going to use my intuition and, that awareness, that self-awareness, and what I have at the time. And I'm going to make a call. Like, what do I need to do right now to be successful in the long term? And, I literally was having this conversation with my hubby again this morning about, when you've had like that rough night or that rough week, and you have to make that call of like, is it better for me to show up right now, or is it better for me long term to actually have a sleep? And that's a decision that you're forever having to make. And I think that part of that communication was really, really important for me, to have that permission and to understand that that's now what my journey looks like. I don't have the ability to just like go in the gym whenever I want, train for 3 hours, and just cruise by, come home and nap, eat, and recover. There are a lot of other moving parts. And in order for me to be successful now, I need to change things around a little bit, and I need to adapt with like that new situation. So that's, I guess, one thing that I've always been really grateful for with Nick in particular, is that he's definitely very easygoing and understanding of individual lives. For me, I'm a parent and I have a business owner. For somebody else, that might not be the case, but they might have to coach 5 classes a day and sort of fit training in and whatever, or might have be having an emotional crisis or a family crisis or anything. There's always going to be something. And I think, yeah, the ability to still sort of know what needs to be done and just build that out as best we can is all you can do. But yeah, for me, I really value communication. That's my number one in my business, in my family, and everything. Like, if I have relationships where I can communicate, then it's okay, because we can find a way. Like, you can always find a way through it.
Absolutely. I mean, that answer fires me up. I mean, that tells me you're about to crush it in 2021. I can't wait. Seriously, because to me, that's the mark of a very savvy, intelligent, and honestly, just a competitor that's grown in wisdom, right? Because those are very hard decisions that you're forced to make on a day in and day out basis when it comes to this session might be best for me to sit out, because I know from my past experience and watching other competitors at the top, we're innately drawn to that hard work, that suffering, that assuredness that we're actually improving ourselves, and rest is the hardest thing to do, or a day off is the hardest choice to make. So I appreciate you sharing that. I know there's a lot of athletes and potentially coaches that probably need to hear those hard lessons. So kudos to you, Nick, for having that macro perspective and giving her the autonomy to be able to adapt as you go. I think that's one of the hallmarks to having a great relationship with any coach.
I'll tell you this
Go ahead.
through my experience. One of the aspects that athletes consistently fail at is recovery and self-care. And I think it kind of hinges on a little bit of what you're talking about, like this drive, right? This innate like passion. And there's a little bit of like, inaccurate bias saying, oh, if I do more, I'll get more. But I've always thought that, an athlete's job is to recover and take care of themselves, right? A coach's job is to provide the training and the tools to kind of meet in the middle, right? And Cara is somebody who you are so self-aware. I'll never forget this one moment. I think it was like leading up to the games, and you got some new shoes, and I was actually out there visiting. So we're in the gym, and you're like, I got these new shoes, and like I can feel my big toes, and it just not right. And this was like through an intense workout, like after the fact. And it was something that I was just taken back on. I was like, you're just so in tune with your body, right? And you know it so well. And so I think it's something that if there are any traits that I would love to be able to take from you and give to other athletes, it's this like almost hyper self-awareness, right? But in a good way, right? Knowing yourself, knowing where you stand, what's normal, what's not, and being able to pick that up quickly. So
awesome. Definitely a key aspect for any successful competitor, self-awareness. This leads me to my next question here. This last year, of course, through all those changes and all the difficulties, we didn't know what to expect in regards to the CrossFit Games and what the qualification process would look like. But after you found out that you weren't qualifying for the CrossFit Games this year with the new setup and the new, how it was going to be with 5 men, 5 women making it out to Aromas. Cara, how was that mentally? Did it set you back? Were you discouraged? What were you feeling at that point?
Yeah, I had a really mixed bag of emotions because, backtracking to starting the season off after having a baby, I qualified for the games at 5.5, completion at 5.5 months postpartum. So I had no expectations to even be there. So I had to like reshift my head. I thought this was going to be like a dip your toe back in type of season, get a feel for it. I had to go like, oh, we're on, like we're right back on. So I had no expectations to start. And then I was doing well. And so then I had to go like, okay, I'm doing well. Like, and then, the natural competitive me, who all I know is to just show up and be one of the best, was like, okay, we're on. Like, there's nothing less than that other than the best. Like, I don't know how to like be lower than that. And so I was like, kind of, trying to be where I was and not where I thought I was going to be. And then with COVID and everything like that, I was quite concerned and a little bit stressed about the fact that I had an infant. Come game time, by the time it was games time in September, she was only 1 and a bit, she's still a tiny little girl. And I was really nervous about having to travel with her. I was still breastfeeding her, still am. So I have to take her everywhere with me. And I was feeling quite anxious about that. And I thought, I'm going to be put in a really difficult position where I'm potentially going to have to say no, because obviously her health and her health comes, trumps everything else in my entire life for the rest of my life. And, but then the competitive side of me was like, I don't accept anything less than qualifying. I was like, I don't remember the last time I haven't qualified for something. Like, I can't, it's been a long, long, long time, you know, I make it happen. And so then when I sort of fell short, I had this split, confused feeling of being relieved that I didn't have to make a tough decision, and that I didn't have to try and travel with my daughter and have this big mess of like quarantine and figuring out how to care for her in a CrossFit Games environment that was very, very unlike any environment that we've ever experienced for the CrossFit Games. So, you know, I was super relieved for that side of things. And then I had obviously this kind of like sinking disappointment of like, I've never not qualified, even though I know I probably shouldn't have even been here to start off with. Like, I didn't expect to be here. But then now that I'm here, I'm like, I want to race to, you know, to the occasion. And I couldn't. And so, yeah, it was definitely, I think it all played out exactly how it was supposed to. And I'm grateful for that. But yeah, you'll always, as a competitive athlete, it's been almost a decade of being a competitive athlete. So to not be the best or up there with the best, it felt weird. And I was a bit like, I don't want to watch it. You know, I don't want to look at it. I don't care. You know, and a bit like defiant about the games and pretend it's not even a thing. It was a silly season anyway. But it didn't set me back by any means. The only thing I made a choice to do was just to enjoy some time to like switch off and like be a parent and do what I needed to do, and then make sure that I made some choices and change of things around to have a really, really good next season, whatever that looks like, and just make sure that I was really spending time on my perspective and making choices so that then if I was ever put in that position again, I could go, okay, cool. I did everything that I was willing to do based on my priorities and what was important to me. And I will like never feel disappointed or out of control in that situation again. I'll just be like, okay, it is what it is. Like, I am where I am and that's it. So yeah, it was a really weird, confusing time, to be honest.
Hey, I appreciate your honesty there. That's amazing. You know, because right now, I mean, as you bring that full circle, even with how it made you feel, it's clear that you have a perspective on gratitude and appreciation for showing up and being able to be at that point, but then still also that hunger to be best of the best all the time. Now, Nick, as that happened, right, as essentially it brings a cascade of new events, right? Reevaluation of a season in the past, and now still building and moving forward. How did that shift your programming, or how does it for an athlete in general, or Cara specifically, as you enter an early off-season stage, like after the games or a season wraps up?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that was on probably both our minds was just recover, reset, and really just kind of get grounded again, right? Because I mean, it's normal, right? You get wrapped up in the season and this big event of your life. The event happens, and then it's the aftermath, right? And I always say, whether you win or lose, whether you're first or last, on Monday, you're still you, right? And so I think I'm a big proponent on just kind of getting back to basics, and not just with training, right, and priorities and things like that, but also like asking the big questions like, why am I doing this? And really kind of getting grounded again in life and why we're doing this. So and Cara does that great, fantastic. And so you know, the off season is probably best categorized as just building an aerobic base, some self-care. You know, we went through a little bit of kind of reassessment period, a little bit on for me on just asking the question, hey, how did all the postpartum PT rehab focused structural work hold up, right? And where are we here? Because you know, in the lead up to the games, that kind of fell to the wayside. Normal, right? And I don't feel like we sacrificed in doing any of that, but I think revisiting that was really important. So asking the questions, hey, how's structural balance? You know, how's things like, you know, pelvic floor, postpartum work, is it all held up? And then obviously some other benchmarks and testing along the lines of like kind of revisiting the priorities, like aerobic base, threshold work, and then that period kind of just I look at it as just the building blocks to where Car is now. So
I love it. I love it. And then so that's clearly preparing us now for 2021, of which I know all the details are still to be sought out because anything could happen with COVID and the new limitations that presents into a new year and all kinds of new things that could happen. But we know that the Open is fastly approaching. We're about 5.5, 6 weeks out. We know that from there we go from an Open with everyone for 3 weeks to a quarterfinals this year. Then after that quarterfinals are top 10% in every particular in any given region. You get an opportunity to go then to what we'll categorize as, I think they're calling them continentals or sanctionals or something like that, right? And then of course after that the CrossFit Games. Now hopefully those two things both get to happen at a large stage or large stages. But Cara, what do you think about the setup this season? Are you excited about that potential, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the like the sentimental side of me likes having that change back and having that sort of process that's like I always knew. I think the last couple of years have just been a little bit messy because CrossFit and the CrossFit Games have just been trying to find their feet on like what the best season is. What does that look like? How does that work? How is that beneficial for the community, for the athletes, for, the business that is the CrossFit Games as well. So there's been a lot of change. And I think the thing we need right now is just some like consistency and some uniformity and, for everyone involved. I do hope, obviously we have to consider COVID too. Like I liked the idea of having sanctioned events because it did give athletes opportunity to go in, trial the competition and have different opportunities to qualify based on where their life was at and to also generate an income. There were a lot of benefits there for the athletes and also for like businesses involved with the games. But I think for right now, for what we have, given what we have with COVID and where the world is at, it's something that we have never known, in our lifetime right now. I think this is probably the best solution because we can't be all traveling all around the world all year and things like that. And this hopefully gives us a little bit more control and consistency and hopefully a little bit more of a flow in how we peak and taper and do all of those things and get ourselves ready and prep for competition by having dates. Having dates I very much appreciate because I can work that into life and work that into, like setting goals and understanding where I need to be at what time and where I can pull back and where I need to go full throttle. So yeah, I think I personally haven't had any expectations of what the season would look like anyway. I've just like kept my mind really, really open to whatever it was because you just have to. I think if your mind is not open to it, it can crush you. And I think a lot of athletes make that mistake. They get too emotionally invested and connected to what their preference is, that they let it ruin them, and then it affects their training and affects their competition. And the best thing that we can do as athletes is just be prepared. Take care of ourselves and be prepared when the time comes with whatever comes up. Obviously, if you love what you're doing, it's a little bit easier to just flow with that. And I think that's really, really important. And that's been a huge focus for me, is like making sure that I'm working hard enough so that if things change or however they present themselves, I'm ready to step out there and put on a good show and put up a fight. But I'm also in a position where I can make adjustments and I can flow with change if that's what happens this year too. And I think we'd be crazy to not consider that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then the same question goes to you, Nick. It's like, hey, how has this season now being released, and we see a pretty decently released schedule in regards to what we can assume will happen. What's your perspective on that, and how did that help structure your programming decisions?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone can agree, like the last year and a half, it's taken the unknown and unknowable to a whole new level, right? And so I think that's something that I've always been attracted to in CrossFit, right? Like you never know what you're training for. You're going to show up, and the multitude of characteristics that a coach has to consider, that an athlete has to consider, that we have to work on is never ending, right? And then you talk about the combinations, and that's one reason why I love CrossFit, right? You talk about taking human body and preparing them for every characteristic that's going to be tested, and that's a monumental task. And so I think that that's something that the season still has, right? So I think I've talked to a lot of people that are pretty emotional over the last year, and a lot of it just because no one really knows what's going on, whether it's whether it's your job, your home, your family with COVID and the changing world that we're all experiencing, or whether it's in the sport. And so I think that what we can do is really stay present and just what's the next step. And so with Cara and looking at this season, there hasn't been anything defined yet. I'm confident that Cara is going to get through the Open, the quarterfinals, and so really we're looking at regionals or continental or whatever they're going to call them, right? But we don't have any information on that, so that's kind of like the big question mark. So in a way, it kind of sets up a very convenient plan or skeleton in terms of laying out what we know already. We're going to continue to work on Cara's priorities relative to games athletes, if that makes sense. And so the Open and the quarterfinals is an opportunity just to refine those game day skills. And I think that's something that we've just started to include right now. And one thing that stood out, Cara, that you said is being too fit for too long. And I love that, and I'm going to steal it. And so here's why, is that a lot of people have this innate feeling that 365 days a year that we should be the fittest we've ever been, and it just doesn't happen that way. It's unrealistic, and you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think in a whole bunch of ways, maybe you can do it for 1 year, 2 years, but eventually the fact that it's all going to catch up to you, right? And the potential for burnout, the potential for the loss of a love of a sport that you once had is real. And so I think that I'm kind of pumping the brakes a little bit, because I know that, like, if we just started to prepare now, 6 weeks is a long time to go hard, especially when you've got 3 weeks on the back end of that. And so to me, that's always the biggest question, is like, okay, when do we start? And not that we haven't started, but like, when do we really start, putting that foot on the accelerator, right? And really ramping up. And it's not there yet. And that's something that I think the conversation between Cara and I, and kind of us knowing more about each other, through the years, that's something that just gets refined. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, in terms of like, whether it's a athlete coach relationship, just like any relationship, the longer you're in that relationship, the better it is and the more refined it is. It breaks my heart to see athletes who change coaches too often, and too often is a loaded term, but I think that there's so much of this sport that comes from a subjective, individual standpoint, that having someone who really knows you is a huge advantage. And it's what's not really talked about. A lot of people talk about the programs and priorities, characteristics, and all this stuff, and we can talk about that. We can talk about what we're working on with Cara, and what she's really good at. But in a way, sometimes that's the easy part, right? It's the timing and how all those pieces get to put together, not too soon, not too late. And so where we are right now is we're just starting to get a taste of game day stuff, right? The other day, I wrote just like a skill session of transitions, right? Saying, hey, spend time transitions with a game day mindset. And if you've been through the Open, you know how important transitions are, especially when you've got a 20-minute AMRAP and you're transitioning 30 times and you're spending 3 seconds each transition. That's a ton of points. So I think the skill of sport is something right now that we're just starting to get into.
I love that. So many jewels were dropped in the last 3 minutes right there. It was ridiculous. So for this being a free webinar, man, it should cost dollar bills. Seriously, and I appreciate even the lob that Cara offered with that early statement, because I was literally about to bring it up with not being too fit for too long. It's not something that is talked about enough within the community, unless, of course, athletes probably do have that one-on-one coach. They're making that investment already in their fitness and their journey and their health, because hopefully the coaches know that that's a thing. You can burn yourself out physically, mentally, in so many different ways. So it's very interesting, because especially this topic and this conversation could go so deep to the fact that, Nick, you probably do, just like I do. I have athletes, you have athletes that aren't like Cara, that need to prioritize their fitness within those first 3 weeks, because their fitness and their skills and their skill set is much different. And they have to prioritize these 5 to 6 weeks prior to the open, because metabolically and strength wise, they have to be in a very different place due to where their 1% or performance really lies. So I think there's tremendous value there. The theme that you guys are both bringing up a ton, which is the highlight of coaching and athlete relationship, is communication. And I love that so much. One more question before we get into hopefully some Q&A. I know that a few people have already chimed in and got some questions that we'll go through, is that, between, let's say we go through the open, we go through the quarterfinals, how does training change commonly between something that's stationary, like in a gym type atmosphere, versus like on the competition floor at the CrossFit Games themselves? What are aspects that you add into the programming, Nick, specifically, that allow that transition to more of like that outdoor type venue?
Yeah, so I mean, a ton of stuff, right? I think one of the biggest considerations that I take is, and it's this kind of big idea of going from slow to fast. And I think that's not something that if you can do anything with your year, with your season, is kind of have that in the back of your mind, right? And you should really be as fast as you can on game day. Not beforehand, not a week before, not 3 months before, unless you're like going through mini testing or simulations and things like that. But in general, right, don't be afraid to be slow, right, and speed up to game day. Just like running a 400, right? Everybody knows, like, if you come out too fast on that 400, you're in for a world of hurt, right? And at the last 100, you're just going to be dying, and you're probably going to slow down, and it's going to fall apart. And then if you wait to speed up too late, you miss out on the best potential. So it's very similar. And so I think that I take a very structured approach for 80% of the year, maybe even more, which means that I want to protect joints. I want to make sure that connective tissues are intact. I want to make sure that the building blocks, both absolute strength, the building blocks for like oxygen uptake to support muscle endurance, overall aerobic capacity, right? Those things are laid down. And as we go into the season, it gets more chaotic, right? And it starts to look and feel and taste more like CrossFit. Right? I think that I'm a big fan of working on individual characteristics and to strengthen those individual pieces. And it's only in the preparation and when you put all of that together that you end up coming out with a true potential. And Cara, maybe you can talk a little bit about this, but I think it leaves this style can leave some folks throughout the year questioning their fitness. Like, am I fit enough? Are we doing things right? Do we need to do more of this? But it all goes back to being fit for too long, which is not sustainable. And so I just say that it gets more chaotic, and those characteristics start becoming a lot more messy, if that makes sense. And I think the biggest focus for me is, well, there's a couple. One, mindset, right? Game day mindset. And this is something that if you're not showing up on game day, like wanting to attack and devour your competition, then it's a great opportunity to ask yourself, what do you need to do to get that? And we're not all going to be 100% all of the time on every single game day, but I think reflection is key. So I think that's number one. And number two, I think it's the attention to detail and the student of the sport. And Cara is an incredible student of the sport, right? You talk to her about, events where Cara, leading up to you getting on the floor. And I love our conversations about, hey, we have so-and-so athlete, strengths, their weaknesses, like this is how they're going to come out and pace this event. This is this person's pace, and knowing exactly kind of where you sit. So I think that right there, that kind of, game, you could kind of lump it into game day mindset or game day knowledge, but really being a student of the game. I think those two things, and just providing opportunities in training that help everything kind of come together, which hopefully, right, ends up peaking on game day.
I love that. And then Cara, to you, a similar question. It's like, how was it hard for you to start to have this mindset to follow a program that was more structured and based off of periodization, to trust the process to peak for a particular competition? Was that something new before you worked with Nick? Had you always done that? What's that been like for you?
This is totally new to my training. I beforehand was very much like, do CrossFit all the time and turn up and do more CrossFit harder. Like that was the expectation, and just, like that was my training for years and years and years. And look, there for a period of time that served me well, and it taught me to be like really uncomfortable for a lot of the time, and it instilled a sense of resiliency in me to push through the crap. But this was a huge relief, actually. I think education and like smart training is power. It gives you a lot of power and understanding. Like, I love to understand the process. Like, I ask Nick questions because I like to know what's the purpose, what are we doing, so that I can make sure that I change my psyche to adjust to where I need to be. So if I'm in a deload, or I'm in a like, hey, this is going to be really bad for this week or whatever, like, know where it's at. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I know what I'm in for. I know how I need to think about it. I know how I need to attack it. But having flow and working with rhythms is the best thing that anyone can do with their life in general, and even more so training, because we're human beings and you just can't be in one gear forever. Like, there's a reason that we have different gears, and that we change and evolve as we get older, and through the days, the weeks, the months are different. Like, and then, there's so many different things. Think about how you feel as a person at the start of the year versus how you feel, like the psychology of a human towards the end of the year. Like, it's really, really different. And I think to not apply that to your training is just it's insane for people to just think that they can just like go at this one level all year round is just nuts. Like, I love it. It allows me to just be where I am, and understand my cycles and enjoy the foundation building for what the foundation building does, and go, look, this is this really good slow time where it's like a little bit boring and I'm building that base, and then you start to do a few other things and you get really excited, and you do, like Nick said, you get that hunger for competition. You start to piece it together and you're like, this is so fun, and you appreciate it's like getting a treat. Your mom doesn't let you eat lollies like every day, but you get one every now and again. It's like, wow. And then you piece it together, and then you deload again, and it works with like the psychology of a person. And I love that. Don't get me wrong, there's been times, especially like when Nick and I first started working together, because it was so different than anything I knew. I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, am I ready? Am I going to be okay? I haven't done a split jerk in like a month and a half. Like, am I going to be all right? And then you are okay. Because it's about, you're still working hard, but you're working sensibly. Like, it's working hard is about being committed to the process and about being where you need to be, rather than just like, the old, like, you can thrash around on an assault bike and you feel like you're going so hard, but really, like, you can move better and be at the exact same pace. Rather than just sort of like looking like you're working hard, or you feel like you're working hard because you're just going erratically, or actually being really smart about how you're working. And then once I had to trust Nick, to be honest. Like, at the start, I just had to go like, whoa, this is really, really different. But I've also asked you for help, and you know better than I do. So let's just trust this, let it play out. And then, like Nick said, as time goes on, it just gets better and better, and you trust and understand the process. And if in doubt, I just ask questions. I just go like, hey, I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about that. And then he'll assess me as an individual and go, look, I know she doesn't need to split jerk right now, like, we're getting to that or whatever, but he might throw me a bone and go like, for the psychology of her training or whatever, like, let's put a bit of skill work in there for her so she feels comfortable. And that's where we're constantly working together within that process to like satisfy, that need in me and that comfort, but also to make sure that I'm well prepared for a competition and that I'm not burnt out, just being crazy all year round.
I love it. Trust and compromise, folks. It takes time. You got to create good relationships with your coaches. It is inevitable in any relationship, any kind. We need that. So, okay, here's what we've got. Nick, we love you, but a few of these questions are geared specifically towards Cara, so I'm going to hit her with them rapid fire. These people love her to death, so they just want to know some things. So, Cara, Christy Jackson said, at one point you started wearing a whoop strap, but I noticed that you haven't really worn it recently. Is there a reason that you don't really enjoy those metrics, or you just don't like to wear the strap? Curious.
Hey, Christy. No, I actually really do enjoy wearing it, and I did really enjoy those metrics. I think I literally just like put it on and off, and depends on whether it's charged or not. I'm just a little bit busy and a little bit slack, to be honest. And I go through phases too. So sometimes I like to be really, really calculated with those metrics. And this depends on where I'm at in life and where my mindset is at. Sometimes I really thrive on those metrics, and sometimes I really thrive on not having them. So I allow myself to kind of cycle through processes like that, like I do for everything else. And just, jump back on. And I still do use it for like more so the heart rate tracking when I'm running and things like that. But yeah, maybe just don't see it as much on the socials. But yeah, I just work with kind of where I'm at and what I feel like I need at the time.
I love it. Answered this question already in a roundabout way, but we'll get to it directly. Kaysen asks, how do you maximize your output on a daily basis being so busy?
That is the $1 million question. The thing that has been the most beneficial for me, and something that I took into 2021 as like a new focus for me, was about prioritizing my energy and, like Nick said, being present on particular tasks. I found that I was trying to do everything at once and not doing anything particularly well, and feeling like really exhausted because there was just always something on from the minute I woke up until the minute I went to bed. And so I sat down and I specifically wrote out and divided each of the tasks that I have in my life, and then prioritize them. I ranked them in order. Obviously it's like my daughter is number one. And then I like book in my day based around those priorities and what that looks like, and give myself a little bit of flexibility, obviously. And the purpose of that was so that when I was in any one of those tasks, I was focused on that task and doing that well, and then I could turn off from it and have some really nice ups and downs in the day. So like knowing that I've done that portion, and then now I can just go and enjoy switching off and being with my daughter and go to the beach in the middle of the day. And that's been something I'm still working on. I think it would take me a couple of months to like be really used to that, but that's been my greatest success right now in being able to do all of my things. And also just like forgetting, we live in a hustle and grind society where everyone's like, more is more, do more. We reward like just being busy and staying up all night and doing things. And I've kind of stripped back to that smart athlete side of me in my regular life as well, and just gone like, that is not smart. And those people who are like on and in that hustle and grind aren't even working efficiently anyway. So yeah, I categorize my life into my portions, you know, whether that's like the little window of time to have a date with my husband, and then, you know, to go hard in training, and then, you know, be full mum mode or whatever it is. Yeah, that's something it's new, and I think it's going to be a long learned skill.
I love it. That's a great answer. Next question. Casey gives you a lot of love. First of all, just quick wanted to say that you are amazing. She loves watching your vlogs and reading blogs and any ways that she has an opportunity to keep up with you. Now, her curiosity is, with you being a mom, MUM, of course, do you have any tips to other moms out there trying to recover better with all the training that you do? How do you recover?
Yeah, you have to prioritize it. You have to find a way. You have to find time. And it's really easy not to, because, you know, we live with that mum guilt. That's like a real thing. And I still don't ever have a day where I don't feel that in some capacity. But I change my schedule around based on what I have. And again, this is definitely a learned skill. I do not get the same recovery that I once got. That's for certain. So the only thing that I've learned is, you know, I always said as an athlete, there's no such thing as like being overtrained. It's under recovered. And I still truly believe that. And I think it's the same in life. So sometimes I've just taken some things off my plate. I'll say no to certain things. If I can't do that, I've just learned to kind of like push some things that aren't in my priority list or don't really contribute to my life too well. And I've just had to like let go of them so that I can make space for the things that are really important, and that do recover. And look for the little wins too. You know, sometimes I just get up a little bit earlier than everyone else in my house so that I get a little moment to myself, and so that I can start training a little bit earlier and have time to stretch. And that's hard. That takes weeks to get used to. But those little things do pay off. Having conversations with my husband about like just needing a little moment where, you know, he can help carry me somewhere, he can help something so that I can, you know, do whatever I need to do. But it's definitely a little bit, it's hard work at the start, and it's a little bit forced until it becomes normal. That's the main message I can send, is it's always hard to start, and then it becomes your new normal, but you just have to stick with it.
I love it. Find a way and build consistency around it. Okay, we've got about 2 more questions here. This one's a great one. The question is, and it comes from Krista, you know, have you ever really started a session and then not saw it through to completion because of some kind of difficulty, whether it was mentally or physically? So that's to you, Car. And then to follow up from Coach Nick, how do you help athletes through those kind of sessions? So Car, you take it first. Has that ever happened to you, and what'd you do?
Yeah, heaps of times. Heaps of times. If anyone thinks that doesn't happen, you're crazy. I literally, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago or something. I walked out onto my salt runner in the garage at like 5:30 in the morning, and I hadn't been sleeping well, and I wasn't feeling great. And I was like, no, I said to my husband, I'm always going to get up, and I'm going to at least try. And then when I start going, if it's like, if I can feel in me, and that comes to that self-awareness that like, this is not right, at least I've showed up and I've tried. And then I got on the air runner, I started, my body went, hey girl, no, not today. And I took my shoes off, went inside, had a stretch, sat down with the dogs, like, and just chilled. And yeah, sometimes you just have to make that call. And, you know, like I always have this rule: you look yourself in the mirror, ask yourself why you're not doing it. So how does this contribute to the long term? Is it because I'm just unmotivated, or I'm being a bit lazy? Am I looking for an excuse? You know, and you're the only person that will know that, and you're the only one that will benefit from that or not. And then if I look myself in the mirror and go, oh yeah, like, look, I'm probably being a bit lazy or whatever, like I'll just, or I'm you know, frustrated that I know that today I'm not going to be able to achieve the pace that I can normally achieve or whatever, because I'm behind and I don't want to deal with that, so I'd rather not do it, then I force myself to do it. But if I can see for the long term that it's smart to, you know, not do it today, you know, based on whatever reason, like I need a little bit more rest, or maybe I need to do it later in the day or whatever, then that's okay. And then sometimes I get it wrong. And sometimes I go, I can't do this, you know, whatever, have a meltdown. And I'm like, that's stupid. I should have done it. And I have to live with that and then try and not let that happen again. Like, you know, we're still people. We still have emotions. We still get tired. Sometimes our emotions get the best of us. And it's just making sure that that happens less and less over time. And I think you get better at it.
I love it. That's true. And then Nick, for you, how do you help athletes when they experience times like this?
I think I'll just kind of steal the analogy from Carl, just being that mirror, right? Like I want to ask questions. I just, you know, it's like, hey, well, why, right? And it's not a bad thing, right? But I think understanding why is really good. Like, and the maybe the clearest example I can give is that with nutrition, right? A lot of people, for instance, go in and go into the weekend and they end up eating a lot of sugar, right? And they feel guilty, right? Like, oh, why did I eat a lot of sugar in this? But that in itself isn't bad, right? Our body's really, really smart and intuitive if we can listen to it. And I know for me, if I'm craving sugar, it's because I'm dehydrated. And it took me a long time to realize that. Like, if I have a craving for sweets, I love sweets. If I do, it means, and I say, well, why? And for me, it's because I haven't been drinking enough water. And so all it is healthy signaling. And so if you're in the middle of a workout and you're like, I'm not feeling it today, I support that and encourage it, right? You can't leave it at that, right? You have to say, okay, you know, for the day, it's you hang up the towel, you're done, you go on with your day, but you have to reflect and you have to say, okay, well, why? And then you have to understand why, and then be able to build off that to become a better athlete. So.
I love it. I love it. Great advice there from both perspectives. Okay, Cara, final question here. Let me came from. Okay, so this is from Alice on her athlete. Which is one word that you would use to describe Cara? One word.
To describe me?
To describe you.
Ooh, complex. if you ask my husband, still trying to figure out, yeah, the explanation behind that is I'm a deep thinker. I am always looking for more and lessons and trying to fail and find new things, and that's really great sometimes, but it's also not great all the times, because sometimes you just like need to just be, you know, like be where you are. But yeah, I can become quite complex because I'm very deep into what's going on, and I'm always looking for a reason and an answer, and trying new things. And yeah, and then my hubby on the contrast is like, it's all good, let's just do today like it was yesterday, it's no big deal. He's like, why are you trying to find another answer to something? Like, it's just simple.
I love it. Well, that's a great answer. And I'll tell you what, it sounds like if he's that way and you're this way, you guys balance each other out perfectly. So sounds like a match made in heaven. That's what we like. That's what we like to hear. It's good. It's good. Well, I'll tell you guys what, I appreciate your time, and I'm so thankful to get to connect with both of you. You guys gave us great insights on your relationship, on where training is right now, where your programming is right now. And hopefully we got to, you know, all the questions that were chimed in that we didn't already cover, at least from this perspective. And hopefully you guys all watching and tuning in got some value from this. Again, if you're interested in getting on a call with one of our coaches and a consultation, feel free to click that link that we've provided, and we'll probably get you with another opportunity through email after this as well. But thanks so much, guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, AC.